Hello, football fans. I'm stealing that from Chapman on Hurdle the Line. But hello, football fans and the other kind of football fans. Welcome to the College Football UK podcast. I am your host, Fletch, and as ever, I am joined by two absolute stunners this week in Nick and Sam. Gentlemen, how are you?
Yeah, all good.
Good.
I missed you both last week. It was just Egg and I for a while. Gary ended up joining, and hopefully, if you notice, Gary's not with us at the moment, but like last week, he did join a little bit later on, so hopefully he does join us. So I hope you had a good couple of weeks, given that you've not been on. Weren't on last week. So today, one bit of news actually before we get properly going is just a little reminder that this is the last Sunday release. Friday recording, Sunday release for a while. And gentlemen, I'm going to ask, why is this the last Friday recording, Sunday release?
Because the Premier League football season started.
Because the Premier League football season started.
There you go.
And we want to get our fill of Everton, and we want to get our fill of Brighton, etc. But could there be any other reason for that as well?
By any chance, is it the start of the college season?
Congratulations. That was your trivia question for today.
That was the trivia question.
That was your trivia question today from me. So,
Nailed it.
yes, on Saturday, a week from, well, it's 6 days from the time of this releasing, 6 days from now, we'll be living it up. Well, some of us will be living it up in a sold-out Aviva Stadium watching Florida State take on Georgia Tech. With that in mind, obviously recording on a Friday night and releasing on a Sunday morning is a bit of a bad idea throughout the season because the one day we miss is Saturdays. And the one day, and Saturday's college football day. So there's no point doing a preview of games that have just happened. So we will be recording on Wednesday nights going forward and dropping on a Thursday morning. So if it is anywhere between Sunday and Wednesday, keep an eye out for Thursday. If it is after Thursday, then a new episode's out already. Good for you. More importantly, gentlemen, before we get properly going into our episode, I'm going to throw it to you, Nick, and ask if you've got any news for us this week.
I do. The biggest news I have is that the NCAA have hit Los Angeles Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh, who was your Michigan's Wolverines coach last year, with a 4-year show clause order. This is for his, and I quote, impermissible contact with recruits and players during the COVID-19 pandemic. They stated in the statement given that he failed to promote an atmosphere of compliance. He violated head coach responsibility obligations. He engaged in unethical conduct. He failed to cooperate with the investigation and, despite substantial evidence, denied any involvement. So that would be your head coach of your college team, Fletch. You know, following the rules as you do. You know,
yeah, glass houses and all that, Nick. You're a City fan. Be quiet.
115 not guilty, mate. 115 not guilty. Just for anyone that doesn't know, the show clause is effectively he's not allowed to show his face in college football. No college is allowed to hire him, whether that be as a scout, as a coach, as a coordinator, as an advisor. Otherwise, they face sanctions themselves. So if he finds himself appearing in college football in the next 4 years, he will face an individual suspension, as will the team that hires him. This ruling is separate to the sign stealing investigation because, again, Michigan Wolverines breaking the rules. They're under investigation for sign stealing and pre-match scouting, which is not allowed. And yeah, so he could get hit again, even though he denies any involvement. Mind you, if Michigan get done again, they could then get done a third time for being constant rule breakers, and yeah. So basically, Jim Harbaugh is in the NFL, and you don't want to go anywhere because he can't go anywhere. So that was the biggest news of this week. Injury front: Nebraska left tackle Teddy Pocheska has suffered a season-ending knee injury. He tore his ACL in his right knee, and that is the third time in 4 years that he's suffered a season-ending injury. He's a senior. This would be his last year in college, and he spent 3 out of 4 years injured.
That is Emmanuel Mosley level unlucky with injuries.
So I don't think he'll get drafted. So, Oklahoma and Texas have officially joined the SEC. Will Howard has been confirmed as Ohio State's number 1 QB ahead of Devlin Brown. He transferred from Kansas State during the transfer portal this summer. Tyler Van Dyke, he was named Wisconsin's starting quarterback. He transferred to Wisconsin from Miami. Alabama are set to receive a belt from the WWE. You know, the WWE hand out champion belts, and also they're doing a custom Alabama belt, even though they're not champions. So work that one out.
Well, it'll be the only thing they'll ever win, so.
Fair enough. I'm not going to get involved in that one. Izo Epenza, he's a defensive end. He's committed to Iowa. Now, if you recognise the name, he follows in the footsteps of his dad, Epi Impenza, who was a defensive tackle, his oldest brother, AJ Impenza, who's a defensive lineman, and his middle brother, Eric Impenza, who is currently a linebacker at Iowa, and he joins the rest of his family in confirming and attending Iowa as of next year. He was ranked number 42 in the nationally, and the number 5 defensive lineman in the Stars camp that we talked about about a month ago or 6 weeks ago. The only other 2 items of news I have is the G5 teams are discussing the possibility of a secondary postseason championship. That's just because there's not enough G5 teams going into the college playoffs, and they just want to be relevant and make themselves interesting. And my final piece of news, I kept this from you, Fletch, because I wanted to catch you off guard. You made a comment this week that I noticed. You hate Notre Dame. And I quote, hate is a strong word, accurate but true. Now, do we need to fall out? Do we need to fall out? Because we're going to go and sit on an airplane next week. I really don't want to have to be fighting because you said Notre Dame. You hate Notre Dame.
Can you quote the message like 3 messages after, please?
No, because I don't have the messages in front of me. I just made that. Right. I just noted that statement.
Well, right, okay. So, I'm bringing receipts.
Bring receipts.
So
okay.
We are a couple of the members of this podcast are in another group chat for college football with various other people in the UK who do stuff around college football. And a gentleman had mentioned, as we were talking about the top 25, that Michigan, their kind of thing for voting for Michigan. In fact, actually, this is a really good segue into this bit. This week, the college football AP brought out their top 25 college football teams for the preseason. And if you are unaware, there is a group of UK-based journalists, UK and Irish journalists who've pulled together to create their own top 25 list, and will do so throughout the season. We are lucky enough to be a part of that. A couple of us are. And we voted this week. I'll get on to what they are in a minute, but one of the gentlemen had said that his strategy was keeping any 25 teams that aren't Michigan. And he was ranked Notre Dame at number 1, and then 24 teams not called Michigan. So I'd said, well, after this personal attack, I would like to personally take Notre Dame out of my top 25 rankings.
And
To which another
said,
journalist in there had said, this is a trick. Fletch didn't put them in because he hates Notre Dame. To which I responded with that. The hate is a strong word. Accurate, but strong. And
there
then,
you go.
well, 5 messages later, I apologise, not 3. I had to put it on record, and I said, I would like to put it on record that I don't actually hate Notre Dame. Thank you, individual, for dropping me in this.
See, I'd already turned off by that point because you'd upset me. So no, while we were going through the week's news, I thought I would highlight that. That was my segue into the rankings. You see, I thought ahead just like you do.
So yeah, I don't actually hate Notre Dame. That was all part of an elaborate joke that a fellow UK-based college football journalist dropped me in on, and
I'll let you off.
But couple of things on that news before we get into this top 25 stuff is the Jim Harbaugh news. We did last week an episode that kind of focused a lot on the Michigan stuff. I tried to be as neutral as possible, and I know Egg kind of tried to be as neutral as possible, given that we're both Michigan fans. But we tried to give as much facts and information towards that as possible. So if you would like to know more about what's kind of going on with Michigan, then please go and check that episode from last week. Basically entitled, Why are Michigan in Trouble? And the answer to that, in short, is for lots of reasons. But yeah, as mentioned, the College Football 25 preseason top 25 was released this week by AP, and this will form the basis of kind of how we will progress throughout the season into who will probably end up in the playoffs, because that will be based off the top 25. And to start off with, I will give you the AP top 25. We can have a little bit of a discussion around it, I guess. And then I'll let you know what the UK and Irish top 25 was. So AP have Georgia at number 1, then Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama at number 5. Then it's Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Florida State, Missouri, Utah, LSU, Clemson, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Miami, Florida, Texas A&M, and then the last 5 were Arizona, Kansas, Southern Cal, North Carolina State, and Iowa. They are the AP top 25. Thoughts on those first?
Notre Dame above Michigan. So.
Which I will have you know was when we voted for the top 25. I did have Notre Dame above Michigan in that anyway. I accept fully that Notre Dame
See,
are
I will be upfront and honest and open. I voted Michigan ahead of Notre Dame.
You see, this is why were we arguing before?
Because I saw your message and I didn't like it. Simple as. No, I mean we've
Georgia
had
at number 1.
Yeah, we've had some discussions off air. We're not far as a pod, as a personal opinions and the UK and Ireland stuff. There is some slight differences. There's a few teams that are in different positions, and there's a couple of teams that are in there that aren't in there. But in general, I think we're all pretty much switched on to the point that we're all about the same. So
I mean, that top 5 seems pretty consistent with, I think most people would generally have Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama as the top 5. It just, I think, depends in what order for the most part. Georgia, I think everyone had Georgia. I don't know about you, Sam, but I think everyone pretty much had Georgia at number 1. If you didn't have Georgia at number 1, they were number 2 in your ranking.
Yeah, I mean, I was biased with my choices, so, but yes, they were number 2 for me. if I was trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can, then I probably would have put them first. But I don't mind being biased.
That we know. That wasn't a question that we had about your Ohio State and Oregon. That's Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. I think again everyone else's consensus part of the top four. Everyone had well, I say everyone. I would imagine that most people had Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. It just depends in what order. I personally, again, because I was completely unbiased, definitely put Oregon above Ohio State because I'm unbiased in that one, and that was just an honest fact. But would you again tend to agree with that top four at least?
Yeah, I mean that top in essence that top five. I had all five teams in the top five, with the only exception being I had Texas at 3 and Oregon at 4. Other than that, I was exactly the same. So Georgia, Ohio, Texas, Oregon, and Alabama. So with apart from 3 and 4 being switched around, I was pretty much bang on the money.
Alabama at 5. And I say that was part of a general consensus top 5 anyway in Alabama, but that is one of the few that I think some people may have looked at slightly differently because I think there are so many unknowns about Alabama at the moment. They are Alabama. They will be a top team. But how they will fare under Kalen DeBoer, no one truly knows yet.
I mean, when it comes to Alabama, I looked at last year's rankings, and they ranked at 5 last year, and that was with Nick Saban. So I was like, well, if they ranked at 5 last year with Nick, then the only way they're going to go is downwards. But I couldn't justify putting Alabama below some of those teams that lower down teams. So I was like, well, I can't actually move them anywhere. So it was just like, well, they stay where they were.
Yeah. And national champions Michigan all the way down in 9 was one. I don't think many people have argued it. I will be perfectly honest and say I didn't have them in my top 10. I had them quite high in the 11 to 20s. Not in my top 10. What about you guys?
I wouldn't have them as top 10 personally. I think that they're riding on. I think a lot of people are maybe riding on last year without looking to, like, obviously seeing a drop off, but probably not seeing as big a drop off as we're expecting. And I think it's going to be a case of that. They're just not going to be as good as they once were for multiple reasons. But I think probably 13th or 14th is probably where I put them, is about that, I think.
Now the interesting thing I had is once I'd hit Alabama, I was like, well, I actually started representing the podcast because I was like, okay, so Ole Miss got selected at 6 by the official rankings. I've got Ole Miss down in 9th because the 3 teams above Ole Miss that I've got, Florida State at 6, Michigan at 7, and Notre Dame at 8. And then Ole Miss backing them all up at 9. I was like, well, I'm not going to go upsetting the rest of I thought, I'm not going to go upsetting the rest of the podcast boys by saying I hate their team and ranking them low. I thought, no, I've got to represent. I've got to be part of the team here.
The one I'm genuinely interested to know, and it's why one of the reasons I'm gutted he's not here, is I want to know how Gary saw Florida State as well. I really want to know where Gary had Florida State.
Number 1, probably.
But I think it gets really interesting the further you go down as well. So obviously that last the last 10 from 16 to 25, but especially that last 5 from 21 to 25 are going to be generally pretty different no matter who you are. So obviously with AP, you've got Arizona, Kansas, Southern Cal, North Carolina State, and Iowa. What about that? I mean, is there any standout there making the top 25 for you?
I mean, there was some teams I had in my top 25 in that bottom five that that didn't make the top 25 at all. So, like you said, that last sort of 5, 6 teams, there's such a variation in it. It's hard to pinpoint where to go.
I mean, I personally, I mean, I've put Kansas State down to win the Big 12. I think they're going to be a really good team, and I think that they probably should be. I'd probably be looking at them between the 15 to 20 mark rather than the 20 to 25 personally.
Well, for AP, they've got Kansas State at 18.
Yeah, so
So
that's
you're
probably
right on the money there.
yeah, and maybe have them a little bit higher, maybe sort of 16 maybe. But again, that's semantics more than anything.
Also, well, 16, 17, you've got Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. Great for Oklahoma, by the way. Congratulations to the whole
I
state.
mean, Oklahoma, I don't think are going to be anywhere near personally. I think they're going to get eaten alive. So that'd be one. But then again, there may be a little bit of bias in that, in the fact that I don't like the Sooners. But yeah, I don't see them being. I'd take Kansas State over both of those Oklahoma teams. I can understand Oklahoma State with them being probably between them, Utah, and Kansas as the three teams in that Big 12 as we've discussed. But yeah, I don't. I think the Sooners are going to get eaten alive a bit in the SEC division. So I wouldn't even have them in the top 25 personally.
So we all know, I mean, even if, because as much as we like to direct this podcast towards kind of new UK based people to college football, the end of the day, one of the things that whether you're new to college football or whether you're a seasoned vet is you are already familiar with the NFL. Very few UK based people will get through to college football before they get to the NFL. So you will probably know who AP are, the Associated Press, because they are responsible for a number of awards in the NFL as well. But it is basically a collection of journalists who they will vote on their top 5, similar to a way that we've done it. But a number of journalists will vote their top 5. They get different teams will get a point score for each kind of ranking that they get. They tally them all up, and that's how the top 25. So this is all worked out on votes, and just as we say here, you know, what my top 25 would have been slightly different than both of yours, just like it would have been slightly different to Gary's and Eggs. And particularly, as we say, as we get down to the bottom of those top 25s, I'll have teams in there that you won't have, and vice versa. So just to add on to this as well, because of that, the amount of journalists that vote, some teams don't make it that did receive votes. So some of the other teams that did receive votes were Louisville, who finished with 111 points. Now, bear in mind the cutoff for Iowa was 140 points. Louisville got 111, Virginia Tech 77, Boise State with 47, SMU, Iowa State, Liberty, Washington, West Virginia, Memphis, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UTSA, Tulane, Appalachian State, Kentucky, Auburn, and Colorado all each received votes.
I mean, the majority of the ones majority of the ones you mentioned there are basically in the 5.
Yeah,
Apart from maybe Auburn, I think was one of the ones that you mentioned. But
Nebraska,
all the others were, yeah, the majority though that
Colorado.
you mentioned were
Yeah,
those. I mean, obviously Liberty was one, Boise State was another. I think you said
Appalachian State,
UTSA,
UTSA,
Appalachian State, yeah.
Tulane. What is interesting to me though, and again we've mentioned this a couple of times, you don't want to get into this conversation, but Colorado received 1 vote or 1 point. But it's interesting to see that they did receive they received a vote, and I'm guessing that 1 point means they finished 25th in one person's ranking. But someone has them genuinely, even in the press, someone has them that high. West Virginia is an interesting one for me, and Louisville, who I had winning the ACC, just missing out on the top 25, was interesting. But again, just quickly, as mentioned, the UK and Irish journalists, including a number of the College Football UK podcast hosts and co-hosts, we also got to vote in this among some of the finest journalists in the country as far as football goes. Never mind just college football. The top 25 for the college football UK and Irish journalists was as follows: Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama. So again, same top 5, just a slightly different order. Then it was Notre Dame, Michigan, Ole Miss, Florida State, Penn State, Missouri, LSU, Utah, Tennessee, Clemson, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Arizona, Texas A&M, USC, NC State, Kansas, and Washington.
Again, there's not a lot of teams there that aren't in the AP list. It's just a case of a different order, and essentially,
Yeah.
as strong as this, things can change. Couple of weeks in, and everyone will do their rankings again, and everything will have changed because someone's on a 3-0 and someone's on an 0-3, and it's at the moment it's just opinionated, educated opinions, really. I think you just got to understand that it's likely to ebb and flow as the season goes, and it's not set in concrete as to this is how it's going to finish.
Yeah. Like I said, this is pre-season. It's the same as doing pre-season predictions in the NFL. A lot is going to change next week, the week after, the week after. So yeah, absolutely, a lot of things are going to change over the next few months. So take it with a pinch of salt. But yeah, so now we've got that out the way. Normally, I'd give you a trivia question, but I'm not going to do that this week because, much like last week, someone stepped up to the plate and wants to do their own. Nick, I believe Nick has brought not only a trivia question, but a whole damn quiz. Take it away, my friend.
It was all to do with rankings, and I was in the ranking zone this week, and I was noticing things as you pick up information from people more knowledgeable than me. And I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. That would be a really good quiz question. And then I was like, I found another one. I thought, oh, that'd be a really good quiz. And as I started realizing, I had like 5 or 6 that were like, these would be good quiz questions. But you can't say, well, I'll give one a week because, in 6 weeks, no one cares about when you get to number 6 interesting fact, nobody cares in 6 weeks. So I was like, well, maybe this could fall. And I was going to just pass it on and just say, here's a little quiz. If I won't take part because I know the answers, but I was instead told go for it. So I've got it. Oh, I expected us to have a full house tonight, but obviously Gary hasn't joined us and Egg's missing. So, it's just the two of you. So it's a head-to-head, I'm afraid. So, so the only thing is the answer is a number, a year, or a team. Nice and easy. Okay? So, question 1. Georgia topped the rankings for the third time. What were the other 2 years in which Georgia topped the rankings? That's question 1.
Was it 22 and 21?
No.
No.
No. So, do you want to get yourself a piece of paper and a pen? Have you got a piece of paper and a pen there?
I can
I
get
actually have.
There you go. See?
old school.
Old school.
Taking a guess.
Take a guess, yeah.
I've just put down 2 random years, so we'll
That's
see how
fine.
this works
That's
out.
fine. Yeah, that's effectively what it is. So question 1, Georgia topped the rankings for the third time. What were the other 2 years in which Georgia topped the rankings? Question 2, Ohio State extended its streak of consecutive seasons in the list to how many? So how many consecutive seasons have Ohio State been in the AP rankings list? Question 3. Alabama's ranking of 5 is the lowest since 2009. Where were they ranked in 2009? So their ranking of 5 this year is their lowest since 2009. Where were they ranked in 2009? Question 4. Oregon's ranking of 3 is the best since when? So I need a year. When were Oregon ranked better or equal to 3? Question 5. Ole Miss had their best ranking of 6 since Archie Manning's final season. What was their ranking and what was the year?
Oh, God.
So Archie Manning, so for those that recognise the name Manning, Archie is Peyton and Eli's dad. His final season, what was that year and where were Ole Miss ranked? Question 6. In the past 6 seasons, how many times have Notre Dame been ranked in the top 10? Question 7. Being ranked at number 4 is the best ranking for Texas since being ranked number 2 in which year?
God.
Question 8, and this is the only question that I want a team as the answer.
Okay.
Which team has the 4th longest active streak for appearing in the top 10? Who is the 4th team? I will give you the 3 ahead of them, behind Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. So which team has the 4th longest active streak behind those 3? Question 9. What was the year in which both Kansas State, who ranked 18, and Kansas, who ranked 22, appeared in the top 5 ranking? That has only ever happened once before. What year was that? And finally, question 10. Since 2001, LSU have failed to appear in the top 25 only once. What year was that? And that is your quiz.
So I'm guessing with these, we're just going to go with who got the closest.
Can do. So back to question 1. Georgia topped the rankings for the 3rd time. The other 2 years in which they topped the rankings were 2008 and 2023.
I had 14 and 22.
Close.
I'll
Ohio
say
State.
I had 22 and 21. I didn't change from 22 to 21.
Ohio State extended its streak of consecutive seasons in the list to what? The magic number you were looking for is 36.
Oh,
I
damn it.
I had 20.
I had 37. 37. I'd seen it this week.
You're going one out or twice. Alabama's ranking of 5 is the lowest since 2009. Where did they rank in 2009?
I have
It was 5
7th.
again.
8th.
It was 5 again.
Oh,
That's what I actually said in the question. When I said the question a second time and said it another way round, I said lowest or equal to. And I was literally trying to, rephrasing it so that you might get a clue, but nobody picked up on that one. Oregon's ranking of 3 is the best since when? The magic year you were looking for was 2014, when they were also ranked
I
at
had
3.
2010. I had 2010.
Ole Miss had their
Nowhere
best
near.
ranking of 6 since Archie Manning's final season. His final season was in 1970, and Ole
I
Miss
was
were
close.
ranked number 5.
I had 72 and 3rd.
It's a good job no one's life depends on these answers, isn't it?
if by any in the alternate universe in which someone's life does depend on these answers, we are so sorry. Rest in peace. Rest in peace.
In the past 6 seasons, how many times have Notre Dame been ranked in the top 10? 5.
6.
5 out of 6. Question 7, being ranked at number 4 is the best ranking for Texas since being ranked number 2 in which year?
No
idea.
2009.
I was way out. I put 1998.
Question 8, who has the 4th longest active streak for appearing in the top 10 behind Georgia, Michigan and Ohio State?
Bummer.
Notre Dame.
Gary should know this. It's Florida State. Question 9.
I thought Bama was too obvious with that answer, though. I thought it can't be about Bama's too obvious. So I went with Notre Dame. Damn it.
Question 9. What was the year that both Kansas State and Kansas appeared in the top 25 ranking? It's only ever happened once before. 1996.
Out 81. I was nowhere near.
And finally, your last question. Since 2001, LSU have failed to appear in the top 25 only once. What was the year?
I put 1999, but it's probably wrong.
2009.
Since 2001, so you're out. So you're out before
I didn't
then.
hear.
Anyway.
I didn't hear that bit.
2022.
Oh yeah, I wrote 2022 down.
So, and I will gladly hand quiz questioning back to Fletcher as of now.
Yeah.
There you
I'm
go.
a way better asker of those than answerer of those.
It's a lot easier when you've got the answers in front of you to ask the question.
It's so much easier. It's great, isn't it?
It is.
So we were going to. Oh, by the way, before thank you very much for that one, Nick. That was
No, what was your
painful,
score, by
but
the way?
0. Big
yeah.
fat 0.
Yeah, 0.
0. Fair enough. Right, okay.
I was very close on a couple, but obviously didn't get them. But the other 8, I was so far off. But thank you very much for that one. That was genuinely painful but fun.
No worries.
So we were going to do this last week before Egg and I ended up talking Michigan, but because Sam was not available, and this is Sam's forte, and what he has brought to the table so elegantly the past couple of months, we wanted to make sure that you were on to do it. Now, among the AP top 25 being announced this week, and more importantly, the UK and Irish college football top 25 being released this week, over the last couple of weeks, multiple awards have started announcing their watch lists. I've got, I think, a couple up here, which we can go through later on, maybe. But I want us to have a look just at some of the players that we think are going to be good to watch this year. There are some obvious ones, there are some not so obvious ones. I'm going to start by throwing it to you, Sam, by asking you about a couple of the players that have caught your eye or are catching your eye going into this season. It could be whether they're up for an award, it could, or they will be up for an award. It could be a player to watch that we need to know for the draft. Just a couple of players that are catching your eye this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned a few before in the past. At some point we are going to have I've got ones for every division,
Yeah.
every conference. Sorry, but I suppose one person that I always say to watch out for, and I'll say it again, and I've said it a million times, is Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, the quarterback. I think he's going to be great. He's going to be starting this year in his first season there. So I think for me, he's one to watch.
Patrick Mahomes Jr.
Yeah, basically Patrick Mahomes in the next generation.
Yeah.
That's the way I see him, and he is going to be a Ram. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
You never know. Who better to take over? Like, he can take over his godfather's role.
Exactly, perfect.
Written in the
Perfect
stars.
timing. Obviously, some of the other players that we know about that are probably going to be people who have seen them last season, being linked with going into the draft. So you've got the likes of Donovan Edwards, you've got the likes of Treveon Henderson,
Yeah.
Egbuka. Just the sort of the standard players that people are going to be looking at, that have decided to go back to college and are actually going to then be playing in again, and obviously probably most likely these are going to be the ones that you're going to see in the 2025 draft. But there is one player which I do believe, and you might have to confirm this, who I'm really sort of keeping an eye on this year. And I've mentioned about Kansas State already and how I quite like them as a team that's going to be in the top 25. And it's Avery Johnson, the quarterback out of Kansas State. Now, I believe that there was talk that he was going to be up for the Heisman Trophy. Now, whether he was actually shortlisted or was put on the watch list for that, I don't know. I haven't actually looked, but I do know that he was rumoured to be on that list. So for me, he's one player to look out for. I did sort of want to look at. I'll just pick it. There's just probably one other player that I'll I suppose mention, who I think is going to be potentially a player that could be quite interesting in terms of on the defensive side, and that's Andrew Simpson at Boise State, who's a linebacker, and I think he could potentially be a big player to watch out for, along with Ashton Gianti, I don't know how you Gianti, however you pronounce that, the running back who's also from Boise. But at some point, Fletcher, I'm sure we'll at some point put some form of watch lists out on social media with all the players from each conference that I've got. But those are sort of some that I'm looking at in particular.
Awesome. Definitely. So keep an eye out for the. I keep forgetting to tell everyone, we do have an Asleep at Work Network website, which I very rarely update, but I will try and put like an article up on there or something over the next couple of weeks, and see if I can continue to update that throughout the season, if I can remember. But we will definitely have it up in some way, shape, or form. A list of a lot of the names, most of the names, if not all of the names you have mentioned so far. Nick, is anyone standing out for you going forward into 2024? Preferably someone that Sam's not mentioned.
Well, yeah.
Or if you want to vouch for anyone Sam's mentioned as well.
Well, I have, as I have played the position, I have always been a fan of the left tackle. So watching the draft in April, as you saw the mighty Joe Alt, Notre Dame, go at 4, and JC Latham went at 7. As I look at tackles, sort of that will be in next year's draft, everyone seems to have Will Campbell at the
Yeah.
top. If he's not top of the board, he's in the top 3 for the draft. This guy is absolutely
He's a
massive,
monster.
quick. Yeah, he's big, he's quick, massive hands. He's gonna be high up. If you need a tackle, chances are Will Campbell will be top of your list. The other 2 tackles that I've got on my radar are Emory Jones Jr. at LSU, and where's the other guy I had? Kelvin Banks at Texas. Now, like I just said, I've just taken that one position because that's a position that I love to follow and keep an eye on. I think like there was this last year going into the NFL, there was a huge run on tackles and guards and linemen because so many NFL teams needed a refresh on that offensive line. I look at my team, the Patriots, and we've still got more holes than a colander at the moment on our offensive line. So I expect us to be high up in that draft, chasing another lineman or 2. So, I think while the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, they get all the glory, they get all the stats and everything else, the quarterback can't do anything without his blind side. So that's why I always keep an eye on that position. But Will Campbell is like the man that I expect to be drafted very, very high. He doesn't even need to have a good season. He could have a mediocre season and still be drafted high.
I have got one O lineman on my list, and I haven't got many of them at all. But Clay Webb at Jacksonville State as an O liner. I don't know what position he plays on the O line, but I just have him down as an O liner to watch. So if I just throw him in there, just to show that I'm not just looking at quarterbacks and wide receivers and all the fancy positions. I've actually got quite a lot of linebackers on this list. I did quite like the linebacker position.
I mean, it's something that I've not really thought about doing or looking into. I don't know why. But at the end of the day, offensive lineman is always at the top end a very well-respected position in the draft. And I can think of the last quite a few years where at least one offensive lineman's gone in the top 10.
Yeah.
Because one of the number one things that we look at NFL teams at the moment, a lot of NFL teams that are rebuilding or really trying to work hard on at the moment is trying to build strong offensive lines. I can speak to, obviously, the Detroit Lions, who've really heavily focused on an offensive line. The Atlanta Falcons have always had for the last years, had a great focus on offensive lines. You look at some of the quarterbacks that have gone. Look at some of the quarterbacks that have gone down in the NFL and how teams are now trying to clamour to protect their top asset. It's a well-respected position going into the draft, and something that I think, as mentioned before, you don't really think of necessarily offensive lines until you see the pre-draft experts talk about offensive lines, and then you go, oh, yeah, okay, Joe Alt, etc. So I think it's absolutely a great idea to have at least a couple of offensive linemen in there, because premium top talent offensive linemen will go high in the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, having a decent O line makes people like Jared Goff look like an absolute worldie of a QB. So,
and so does Jared Goff on his own. I'm not going to bite.
I mean, that's actually a good point. In the point that, when that draft was happening, the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals were like, do we take Penei Sewell or do we take Jamar Chase? And it was all about, do they get Joe a weapon or do they get him a protector? Now they turned out to get him a weapon, and then he went and got injured because he didn't have anyone protecting him. And
He's-
obviously, Penny
he's-
Saw went to your Lions. So you know you that's the point of the draft. You can't draft everybody. Some teams do have. You look at Chicago this year; they had 1-9, but you can get lucky and have one or two picks close by, but chances are you have to prioritize, and the wide receivers will probably win you the game, but it's those left tackles that keep you in the game.
Yeah.
So
It's the dirty work. It's
Yeah.
what do they call them in the NFL? It's the non-skilled position. They don't
I
get
wondered where you were going though with that then.
it's the non-skilled position. The ones that they don't get the
It's the unsung
communication in the
heroes,
helmet.
isn't it? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the unsung heroes and that. The ones that, I mean, it's very rare that you tend to see an O lineman is touted as the guy on the team. But I mean, you look at some of the ones that, I mean, immediately when I think of sort of O lineman, you immediately think of like Trent Williams, and arguably he is in my opinion the Niners' most important player
Yeah.
because he unlocks everything. I mean, was it a couple of games they missed last year, and they lost both of them,
Yeah.
and he wasn't playing. It's like so, and I mean, this is why I think maybe obviously not going too much onto NFL, but I think this year the Eagles may not be as good behind the ball because they've lost Jason Kelsey, who is arguably one of the best centers that we've had in the NFL for a long time. So, but he's not the first player you would write down in terms of you say, name an Eagles. He wouldn't be the guy that you mentioned. It'd be Jalen Hurts. It'd be AJ Brown. It'd be Saquon Barkley now. Like those are the players that you would talk about, not your Jason Kelseys. So yeah, I think it's always good to keep an eye on those positions. I think it's good to keep an eye on every position, especially when you're sort of wanting to get into the NFL a bit more deeply, and then just looking at your flash plays and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. It's a position that you genuinely need to value, and yeah, absolutely. So looking at that as well, there's a couple of players I guess to watch in general, but I'm going to read for you because at the end of the day, of all the individual trophies that a player could win, the number one most coveted in the NCAA is the Heisman. That's the one that that can take you to being first overall. The top two picks in the last draft were both Heisman winners. So the NCAA have an article at the moment and a number of players to watch for the Heisman. Now there are various places you could look. You could look at betting favourites, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to try and read a few of these as possible. The one thing about the Heisman that most people already know, but we kind of need to mention, it's similar to the NFL MVP. Majority a QB award. That's just the way it is. It is how it is. But they have at least thrown some defensive players to watch in there, including Abdul Carter, Penn State edge, cornerback Travis Hunter from Colorado, defensive back Malachi Moore from Alabama, defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, edge James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, and linebacker, and I believe this man has been mentioned on a previous podcast by Sam himself, Harold Perkins Jr.
Oh, Harold Perkins,
the linebacker out of LSU.
I believe I did mention him actually.
You did.
I'm going to consult my written list. I did write him down. Yeah, he is there.
Yep.
Travis Harold Perkins, even not Travis Perkins. That's a company.
that is a company.
They will build you a good left tackle because they'll just build you a wall.
They will.
In the wide receivers category, they have another name brought up by Sam previously, Luther Burden III, a wide receiver out of
Yeah,
Missouri.
Luther Burden. Yeah.
Zachariah Branch out of Southern California.
Yep.
This name has been mentioned already 2 seconds ago in the defensive backs. That would be Travis Hunter out of Colorado. And Tetaiora McMillan
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
Tetiora
on my
McMillan
list.
Arizona.
is. Yeah.
Running backs,
Ollie Gordon.
Ollie Gordon, the second, is in there from Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Donovan Edwards out of Michigan.
Trayvon
Omarion
Evans.
Hampton out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Ashton Jeante, as mentioned already. Boise State. And Nick Singleton of Penn State.
Interesting that they've not got Travion Henderson there. That's interesting.
Yeah. Donovan Edwards is Ollie Gordon is if any running back would stand the most chance, I think it would be Ollie Gordon, who is he's unreal, like way overpowered on college football 25. Ridiculous. Nice to see Donovan Edwards in there. Just on a personal note.
But I think they're going to have to rely on Michigan. Have to rely on him a lot this year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Colston Loveland as well. If you want actually a player to look out for this year, Colston Loveland, because Michigan do not have a standout receiver at this moment in time. Colston Loveland is one of the few left that took up quite a few snaps last year. He's going to have a big year. So, there's one from me for someone to watch this year.
I mean, Nick Singleton, he had a great year this last year just gone. You know, he had a really good year where he put up some really good numbers, and now going into his senior year, he's got a chance of if he stays injury free and he puts another good year down. I know he's a running back, and the value of running backs in the professional game is low. You wouldn't expect him to go anywhere near high in the first round, low first round at best, maybe high second round. If he puts another good year of tape and another good year of numbers down, he's going to be up there in that sort of group of running backs that will get picked on that second day in round 2 or 3.
Yeah. I mean, they have the sort of, he has the ability to be that level of sort of Trey Benson's and Blake Corum's, that sort of second, third round picks. And he could, I really like Nick Singleton. But yeah, it's whether he can stay injury free is the big worry. But I think you could say that about a lot of the running backs. I think there's been a few that have had quite bad injuries.
It's also worth noting as well, I think, especially when you're looking at players to watch, for the draft, etc. It's one thing to say that, oh yeah, this player is a great player at their position. In college, they are arguably a top 2, top 3 player in their position, but it doesn't matter when it's such a devalued position in the NFL. So just because they may be a top 2 or 3 player at their position in college football does not make them an automatic, like, oh, watch out for them on day one in the NFL. Like, I know this is a bit of an extreme example, but long snappers. You could be a great long snapper. You're not going in day one. Any team that takes a long snapper on day one, sack your GM now. The quarterback list given by the NCAA is massive because, I'd say it is.
They've basically named every single quarterback on the top 25.
They've
and
named more. But here's my little trivia for you this week. How many of the last 25 Heismans has a QB won? It might be easy to ask how many hasn't been won by a QB.
3.
23.
It's 21 of the last 25. So four times in the last.
Yeah, I was going to say 4, and I thought that feels too high.
In this century, 4 Heismans have been won by someone who isn't a QB. So they put a lot of quarterbacks in there. They've split them into into various different categories. But I'll just read the favourites. If you want to throw some other names in there, you can do. But these are just the favourites. Carson Beck,
Carson Beck.
Georgia.
Yeah, Carson Beck.
Jackson Dart from Ole
Yeah,
Miss. Quinn Ewers from Texas.
yeah.
Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. Jalen Milroe, Alabama. And Shador Sanders, Colorado.
Right,
I mean,
straight away there. Is Shador Sanders on that list because of who his dad is? Because he is not. I know he's getting so much hype, but he is not a great QB. I'm sorry.
well,
If I'm
apparently.
speaking out of turn, I might be speaking out of turn, but I do not think he's as good as everyone makes out. And if he goes in round 1 next year,
Well,
well,
apparently he's the reason he didn't go for this year was because he knew he wouldn't be the number one. So that's why he's going next year. So he obviously believes that he is the number one pick. But
Well,
I mean, I would take probably all of the ones that you mentioned over him personally.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Shador Sanders was the betting favourite to go first overall next year. Now, this, with all due respect to Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, etc., this isn't the greatest QB draft coming up.
No, it's a
Like,
much weaker group of QBs for sure.
but I don't get no disrespect to Shador Sanders. You're not the best QB in a weak QB class.
But even if he was the best in a weak QB class, looking just forward planning, what teams need a quarterback realistically in the NFL?
Next year, I
Yeah,
don't know. And it's a bit like, congratulations, in a couple of years, you'll be Kenny Pickett, who was the best QB in arguably the worst QB draft in a long time.
you know what it's like. It's like being Liberty in the accuser. Well done, you're great, but you crap. You're playing against other crap people. Sorry if there's any Liberty fans out there who made that analogy about them, but I've rooted for you, and you apparently you're not going to be anywhere near the top 25. So
Some QBs, by the way, that have got a mention in this are some of the transfer QBs. So you've got obviously Will Howard, who transferred to Ohio State, and as has been mentioned earlier, is being named as the starter for Ohio State this year. KJ Jefferson, who transferred to UCF. Riley Leonard has got a special mention after transferring to Notre Dame. Grayson McCall after transferring to NC State. DJ Uagalele, who with
DJ who?
pardon,
DJ who?
Uagalele,
Fair enough. I was just making you say it twice.
who transferred to
Florida
Florida
State,
State,
Florida State
and Cam Ward after transferring to
was
Miami, Florida.
Malachi Nelson not on there? For
Not
Boise,
in the transfers.
because obviously he
Might-
transferred to Boise, didn't he? So I would have thought that if he was in with a chance, or if they had him on the list, then he should be on the transfer list.
They might have put him. No, he's not in these lists.
Oh well.
They don't value him as high as you, Sam.
I mean, I've not got him on any of my lists. I like him. I think because he was meant to be the guy that was meant to take over from Caleb, wasn't he? And then he left.
But yeah, if you are up, and again, hang on, I want to try and get this up. I did have the tab open. Talk amongst yourselves for a second. I'm trying to get this tab back.
So there you go. There's a question then. We talk about importance of positions. We know that the running back's not a valued position in the NFL. Take out the quarterback, take out the wide receiver, and take out the left tackle. What would you say is the most important position in the NFL, coming from college?
Are we talking offensive?
Can pick defensive if you want. I was going to pick defensive.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I would say edge. I think having a decent edge rusher makes a whole world of difference. As
Yeah, I
as
think
as someone who supports the Rams, who we've never had a decent edge rusher in God knows how long, and to go and get Jared Verse on with our first round pick, which I'm very
I
happy
think
about.
if you don't have a good edge, you're relying on having two monster QBs because you're gonna blitz to stop the run game, which
Mhm.
means you open yourself up to the pass game, and you just then need two monster, cornerbacks to protect you against those good wide receivers. So I think it does a thing, but it does boggle the mind when you see some teams value certain positions higher than others, but every team values one or two positions the same, and it's always so high that their draft status becomes higher than they probably deserve to be taken. But that's
Yeah,
part and parcel of the needs of the pro game.
yeah. I do think edge seems to be one position that is always going in the first round. Tackle, like you said, is another one that always seems to go in the first round. Bar obviously the obvious ones, the QBs, the wide receivers.
Yeah,
I think a position that's probably getting a bit more traction now is, especially over the last few years, is probably the tight end position because I think a lot has changed in terms of being either a dual playing, so a blocking and a receiving tight end, but also just being a receiving tight
You
end.
you're a big-bodied receiver.
Yeah,
yeah,
For a lot of it, you are a big-bodied receiver
yeah,
who is expected to be just a monster in the short to intermediate game.
mm,
That's being, you look at some. I guess you look at some of the tight ends that we've got in there, who are the top tight ends that you could think of. Okay, George Kittle can do both,
mhm.
but let's face it, the number one. If you ask almost anyone who the number one tight end in the league is in the NFL, it's Travis
Travis
Kelce,
Kelce.
and he can't block for shit.
Yeah. But then you look at all the other ones that are up and coming that have been in the last few years. Kyle Pitts, not really a blocker, he's a receiver.
Sam Laporta, same.
Sam Laporta, he's a receiver. Trey McBride, probably a bit more of a dual type, but he's more of a receiver. Dalton Kincaid, receiver. Brock Bowers, receiver. So they're all more. That is where the tight end position is going.
I mean
But I also,
the other thing is someone like Gronk, who was absolutely monstrous, could not block for shit.
yeah,
But he had the build of a blocking tight end, but he couldn't block. But he could
yeah,
he could catch with the best of them.
Which is
You know,
funny because what that genuinely makes me laugh because the number one thing I see every time someone says who's the best tight end, Gronk or Kelsey, the number one thing people say is, well, Gronk could block, so
he
um,
yeah.
couldn't.
so this is via Bet three
Gronk's
six
the answer,
five.
by the way.
Bet365. I have the Heisman favourites, and I'll go through the top couple here. Dylan Gabriel is the favourite via Bet365 at 7-1.
Wow,
Second is Carson Beck at 8-1. Third is Quinn Ewers at 9-1.
wow, that's high.
Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart are both at 12-1. Nico Lamaliava, I don't know,
Yeah,
and Will
QB.
Howard at 14-1 are the top basically five.
Carson Beck's the only one I'd be willing to put money on. He's the only one there that
I
I'd
was, I
think,
was,
well,
I'm surprised that they put Ewers so high, but I mean, I really like Ewers, but I don't see him as being a Heisman winner. But I suppose if we go and finish 12-0 and win the championship, then he's the reason for it.
What I found interesting. Where did he go? Shadar Sanders is 25-1. alongside Avery Johnson, Noah Fafita. Yeah, just those two. Alongside Avery Johnson and Noah Fafita, 25-1.
But then, like we've said, look at the Heisman winners over the past few years.
And just because, as I've said, a Heisman, it's very rare that a Heisman doesn't go top 5, let alone not in the first round. It's happened, but it's very, very rare that a Heisman winner doesn't go. Like, sometimes it is a Heisman can almost be considered at times like just a vouch for number one overall. So just to kind of, in comparison, again, according to Bet365, the number one overall draft pick favourites are Carson Beck at 7-2 is the favourite to go number one overall.
He won't go.
In second is Shador Sanders at 11-2.
I don't see either of them being the number one pick
Then
at all.
no, and then James Pierce Jr. 13-2, Connor Vaigman 12-1, Cameron Ward, Quinn Ewers both 14-1, Will Campbell 16-1, Drew Allott, Mikael Williams both 20-1, and then
I would put more. If I was a betting man, I would put my money on Will Campbell personally.
16-1.
He'd probably be the first tackle to go at number one in many a year, if ever. Maybe that's if someone wants to look that up. Last time a tackle went at number one.
If you're not a QB and you win the Heisman Trophy, the NCAA just take it off you anyway.
That's true.
And they say no, you can't have it.
Oh, damn it! I had it then.
For those that didn't get that, I was referring to Reggie Bush, but you know, Reggie Bush was a running back that had his Heisman taken away for questionable reasons.
But he's had it properly handed back to him now, though.
Yes,
and all his stats, hasn't it been put back up in the Hall of Fame as well or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, College Football Hall of Fame.
It's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No, it's in the college one.
So,
because he's in both Hall of Fames, isn't he? He's in the College Hall of Fame, but he's also in the Pro Hall of Fame in Canton as well, I think.
6 times in history, an offensive lineman has gone first overall.
When was the last one?
2013. So it was the Chiefs.
Who was that?
I think it was
Who
the
was
Chiefs.
that?
I haven't got it. I haven't got it yet. I will find it now, but I think it was the Chiefs. Yeah, Eric Fisher.
Okay.
Oh, of course it would
Eric
be.
Fisher in 2013.
Yeah.
To the Chiefs. I knew it was the Chiefs.
So I think that's who if I was a betting man, that's who I'd put it on. Or there's another guy who I cannot for the life of me think his name now, but I will find him and report back who I mean.
But out of the last 5 number one overall picks, 3 of which have won the Heisman.
So Daniels, and then Bryce Young before
that. Caleb Williams, Bryce Young.
Did he win?
Caleb Williams won it a year ago. So
I was going to say he won it the year before. That makes sense. I was really confused because I remember Jaden Daniels was the one that won it coming into the draft.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels won it this year. Well, season just gone. Caleb Williams won it the year before. Bryce Young won it the year before that. The Trayvon Walker and Trevor Lawrence didn't win the Heisman. However, then before that, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield all won the Heisman.
So it's almost, if you win the Heisman, you're likely to go number one pick.
Yeah. if not, you're likely to
Top
go
5.
very high up.
Yeah. This is where we look at when was the last time that someone who won the Heisman was drafted outside the top 5 picks.
I'm pretty sure there was a guy who I think he either went 7th round or went undrafted after winning the Heisman. It was like the crazy thing that they said was like it's like such a rare thing to have happened. I think he's the only one. But over the last few, let me just get them up here. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Devontae Smith.
Oh, he was drafted lower.
Where
was Devontae Smith drafted?
10th.
Yeah, so there you go. So there's one that's outside the top 5.
Yeah, so then you had Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, all of which went 1st overall. Lamar Jackson.
He went right at the end of the first.
32nd overall. Derek Henry, who went 45th overall. Marcus Mariota, who went 2nd. Jameis Winston, who went 1st. Johnny Football went 22nd overall. RG3 went 2nd overall.
Been sacked from ESPN.
I will say I'm not going to continue to just go constantly. But Jason White in 2000 won it in 2003 and went undrafted in 2005.
There you go. That's a drop off, isn't it? Fall from grace. Heisman in 2003 to not being drafted at all in 2005.
Charlie Ward won it in 93 and went undrafted. Yeah, so there are a couple actually who've gone undrafted completely after winning the Heisman. It always makes me laugh. The first ever Heisman winner, that Jay Berwanger, never went into the NFL.
How weird.
Because I remember looking it up ages ago. He had a contract dispute with Philadelphia, who drafted him, and he wanted more money than they were offering. So he turned it down and again tried to go to Chicago. They weren't offering enough money. So he turned it down again. And it was like, he later said it was the biggest regret of his life, obviously never playing in the National Football League. But yeah, first ever Heisman winner, was the first ever draft pick and never went into the NFL.
Wow.
So yeah, there have been a few. Yeah, it was something like, yeah, it was at the time. You look at it now, it's like $100 a game. So it was like $1,000 a game, which now works out at a lot of money. But it was one of the anyway. Are there any other players that are standing out to you this season? Particularly, I'm going to ask for any group of 5 players that you're looking at. We've all been assigned a conference this year. I do have to delve in a bit more into my conference because I took the Conference USA. Go Owls. But are there any particularly from the conference that you are looking into this year that you've seen?
Can I ask the question, what's my conference again?
The AAC. You've got the AAC.
The AAC, that's it.
So I have got 3 players. I've got a defensive end, I've got a QB, and I've got a linebacker. And I've put the linebacker in there because he is from Old Dominion. And I know how much Nick loves Old Dominion. So I've picked a guy from there. He's called Jason Henderson. He's a linebacker from Old Dominion. He's a guy to look out for. I've got Landon Jackson, defensive end at Arkansas. And I've got Jordan McLeod, who's a QB at Texas State. They're the 3 that I've got from the Sun Belt division, which is the Sun Belt Conference, which is my conference. So far, I've not got any Raging Cajuns.
I was going to say,
I will have one.
Why did you get the Sun Belt Conference, Sam?
Because of the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and I refused to have any other apart from them. I had dibs.
Me and Gary met up and had a fight in a park over the MAC, and Gary won. So Gary's got the MAC.
Well, I've got 3 players in every conference that I've got as my to watch, apart from the AAC where I've got 2 because I couldn't find a third one just yet.
Sounds like you're going to be in for a fun year, Nick.
I know I'm gonna have to start. I'm gonna have to start getting me research done.
Well,
So
I'll start you off with a couple of Taylors. There's Rock Taylor at Memphis, wide receiver,
What a name.
and Donyai Taylor, linebacker at UTSA.
I
So
will
the
make sure
Taylors.
I keep the Taylors.
Um,
Suits you.
that's that was a good joke. I like that.
I know. And Fletch wasn't even paying attention.
No, I'm sorry. What was the...
I said
He
I gave
said
him a couple of
he's,
Taylors, and he said suits
and I
you.
said suits you.
Well done.
Mountain West, I've already mentioned a couple of guys from Boise.
Yeah.
Andrew Simpson, linebacker, and Ashton Janty, running back. I've also got Ricky White the third, who's a wide receiver at UNLV.
Okay.
While we're here, I may as well mention the other stuff. Mentioned pretty much all of them now. Jay Hard. So for Cusa, Jay Hardy, defensive tackle at Liberty. Caden Salter, the QB at Liberty, and then Clay Webb, the O-liner at Jacksonville State. And then Mac, which is that Gary's division. He got Mac. I've got Brett Gabbert, the QB at Miami, they're my pick to win the division, so that's why I've got him. Krishan, can't pronounce his name now. Krishan McCray, wide receiver from Kent State, and then Ontario Brown, running back from North Illinois. So they're my guys from the group of 5 to look for. But I will be adding a Raging Cajun to that list, just for the
Good.
sake of adding one to that list.
Please do. Please do. I think I've just realised kind of the lengths that we've gone to so far to record and how long we've been going. So it might be a good idea to start wrap it up. I've seen Nick's face glow, which means he's Googled something. Is there anything that you would like to bring to the table?
No, I was googling. I was googling AAC players to watch. I was going to start a list, but
I was going to say that your face only ever lights up like that when I've asked a trivia question, so I know you're Googling something. So, one thing I have Googled and I will leave us with today is, what is the best part of every year? What's the real best team that comes out every year? All name team. So 24/7 Sports have released their all-name team for 2024. So with the likes of Kool-Aid McKinstry and Chop Robinson making their way to the NFL, a couple of great names are no longer in college football. So here are the best names in college football by position. So you've got quarterback General Booty from
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
General Booty was always going to be in there, wasn't he?
Running back Javensky Schlenbaker from Washington. Fullback Daba Fofana, which is very fun to say. Tight end Rowdy Bears out of FIU.
Rowdy Beers.
Rowdy Bears, and that is spelt like beers as in the
drink.
alcoholic beverage.
And he's rowdy.
Rowdy. Wide receivers on the roster are DeColdest Crawford,
Okay.
which I do believe was one of the... Do you ever remember the Key and Peele sketches? With the guy's name, it's one of my all-time favorite comedy sketches where they do the NFL, like they do a football
yes,
game.
they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and they do the
ridiculous names. I do believe the coldest Crawford was in the sketch of silly names. A comedy sketch. That's not a good look when your name appears in a comedy sketch as a stupid name. But yeah, you have the coldest Crawford out of LA Tech and Fat Watts, as in Watts is in like wattage, the electricity thing.
Fat Watts.
From Tulane. Your left tackle is Jaden Muskrat from Auburn. Your left guard is King Large from
King
SMU.
Large. Brilliant.
And because I am an
cracking.
utter child, this is my favourite one. Your centre is Parker Titsworth. Your right guard is Dodge Saucer, and right tackle is Hans Hammer.
Hans Hammer.
On defense, you have your 3D linemen are Shittasilla, Demon Clowney, and Blazin Lono Wong. Your edge is the British memorable factor
Memorable factor.
out of Duke. Your linebackers are Power Eccles and Chief Borders.
Chief Borders.
Cornerbacks are Mobility, which
Please say no. They've not called their kid. That can't be real.
Mo MOH, Bility Bility. That is Mobility.
That's just cruel.
And Alpha Khan, defensive back Major Burns.
Major Burns.
First name Montgomery.
You have Pig Cage and Storm Duck as well.
Storm Duck.
The final two, by the way, your punter and your kicker. Now, the pool for this one is slightly a lot smaller, so there aren't many great names to choose from. But we do have Maximilian von Marburg as your punter and Bert Auburn as your kicker. Sorry,
Bert Auburn.
Bert Auburn. So,
he's our kicker.
and he's been named in the best names.
Bert Auburn's our kicker. I was just thinking, I recognise that name. He's our kicker.
So, if for whatever reason you've managed to stick through this episode, fair play. But if after all of this you've been thinking, I don't care about these, I want something really important to follow. Now you have other names of people that you can follow for more important reasons because their name is great. And we have mentioned it before, memorable factor. Duke, I think he officially goes down as a linebacker, but he's been put in this as an edge. He is from...
Yeah, so he's an outside linebacker then, really,
pretty
isn't
much,
he?
yeah. I don't think he's going to go very far. I think he's probably had a better career in like the sailing, etc. But yeah, he's in there too. So I think we can leave it there, gentlemen, and call it a night. I will see you both on Wednesday, and we can start previewing week 0 again, as mentioned a second ago. If you are still listening to this, fair play. Absolute fair play to you. I'll see you on Wednesday.
See you later.
See you later.